Welcome to the Pencil Bob channel. I hope you enjoy my stories. Please like and subscribe, and hit that notification icon so you never miss out. Now on with the stories.
I screwed my HOA. As the state of the world is completely depressing right now, I decided to share this story in the hopes it may cheer a few people up and myself typing it. Small caveat that I tweaked a few details to maintain some sort of legal confidentiality, but otherwise there is no artistic license in its retelling. My husband and kids and I live in a HOA co-op condo type area in a jurisdiction that historically has let HOAs run wild with power. My HOA was always very Karen-y, with everything from paint colors, plants, children's sounds, and especially screening prospective buyers, tenants, and those who otherwise resided in a home in the HOA. I will skip details, but as you know, HOAs and their rules historically were to keep out the undesirables. Choose your reason for undesirable, but it usually ends with some sort of ism or other common victims of housing discrimination, e.g. the undesirable, disabled and type of families who have more than us AVG of one or less kids per household. My spouse owns a second property in the HOA that he rents out, and what can I say, we are weird bleeding heart liberals, and rented the apartment via Section 8, which is when the government subsidizes the rent for low-income people. However, the rent subsidy is well below fair market value for the middle-class neighborhood, so Section 8 apartments are rarely encountered in such nice areas. This was the only time someone ever applied to rent with Section 8, and they allowed her because the lawyer said there was no reason to deny her, as income isn't a factor here, and she has no criminal record, etc. However, from that day forth there was a campaign of harassment and violations against her. Calling police, calling Section 8 to get her off the program, dozens of complaints that were ridiculous, often involving children being children, or that everyone else did, or rules so strict and old from pre-Fair Housing Act Law -1970s, like children can't be outside unattended until 18. They would especially try to enforce such insanity against her and anyone else they decided they didn't like. People really hate poor people living in their community. It's insane the drama that went on. I of course defended what I could as the violations were aimed at my spouse, the landlord. I am very quiet and shy, and I am a research attorney in an extremely specific narrow area of law. That is all I do. I analyze an extremely specific area of law, research, make written arguments based on law and fact with backup documentation. Well, one day this nastiness started getting out of hand and my kids got targeted and I went mama bear. My God, I went mama bear for my kids and my tenants' kids. I didn't know I had it in me because I am a nose in a book lawyer. As you know, HOAs leverage the power of the HOA attorney to get what they want, because unless the community is rich, if the HOA attorney goes after you, everyone folds because attorneys' fees are insane for the average person. And my community has no other attorneys or rich people who will pay $450 per hour to fight a HOA violation that is unfair and can bankrupt them. So when they sued my spouse, he didn't fold. They were surprised. Me, on the other hand, I am a research attorney. The harassment was over several years, and as all autistic lawyers do, I saved and documented every piece of paper, email, convo. Asked for clarification in writing from management for every board comment or manager comment from the day it all started. I pored over condo docs and researched the law, researched the changes in the law and the deficiencies in the HOA docs and enforcement of illegal provisions. I am a weirdo, I know, but I have a passion for this sort of stuff and love to hear. That being said, I am not a litigator. I never once been to court or even worked at law firm that does that type of thing. I consult on a very specific type of legal issue and apply it to a client's situation, but I don't procedurally argue anything in front of a court or file papers or do procedures. I just tell other lawyers, business people, advisors, etc. my thoughts and they do what they need with it. It was sadly hilarious because my filings were full of procedural errors, and the judge was sympathetic because he knew I was trying my best, and I had a very valid legal argument with tons of well-organized evidence tailored to the law. But my God, there are so many rules with litigation down to the heading of a document, and whether you used a magic word, I kept messing it up. But I would ignore the complaints of my amateur work and would just keep on plugging, fixing the error, trying again, getting state and federal housing agencies involved. It was getting expensive for them to keep filing motions. They got so obsessed with this, the HOA managed to get sued by 2 other people because they spent all money on legal fees instead of, say, fixing the giant pothole or roof issue in front of someone's house the HOA is legally responsible for. So now lenders won't lend to people to buy because it's too risky due to lawsuits. People had to sell for less and value went down because only cash buyers, non-Karens who barely know HOA exists, are starting to ask questions. They are also getting subpoenaed by Fair Housing to answer questions, e.g. I would notate that my tenant got a citation for XYZ, and I would document non-Karen also did XYZ and no violations. So now non-Karen is getting asked questions about if HOA ever cited her for the wrong type of barbecue grill allowed by docs, which of course they never did except for my tenant who has an issue to show selective enforcement. They retaliated by threatening to call police next time my kids breaks a HOA rule by being a child playing outside. Retaliation for fair housing complaints is very illegal. It was documented and witnessed. I went even more mama bear to the point I scared my husband after that threat to my kids. Long story short, $50,000 in legal fees on their end, $400 in filing fees on my end, but too much of my free time, and HOA finally begged me to settle lawsuit they started, call off the Fair Housing government investigators, and they will agree to leave me alone and change the HOA docs to comply with law and stop being so Karen. TH are now terrified of me, and I have been taking advantage by breaking every small rule imaginable. Unapproved plants, no grass, unallowed umbrellas, incorrect mailbox color. I free-range kids and ignored them. And all the other people under 50 have joined in enjoying by doing such awful things as replacing turf grass with invasive native plants and the like now that they know how is powerless. I love it. I won't go into the details, but my condo board found out about 3 years ago that I have money and am not afraid to use it. I filed an age discrimination complaint and hired a private attorney. The issue I wanted fixed cost about $600. My attorney fees were over 5 times that, so it would have been cheaper for me just to fix the problem myself, but I was just so sick of all of their crap. They folded when they got the certified notice that my age discrimination complaint was accepted for investigation. They completely leave me alone now too. Yeah, that's fantastic. I beat my HOA once I bought a place, and during the closing some joke was made by the former owner and I laughed along with him. Well, it turns out the former owner and the HOA were at war. I had no idea I walked into a hornet's nest, so immediately I became the enemy of the HOA. I learned the rules frontwards and backwards and I used them against them, and I want every step of the way. However, they tricked me because I've had become involved in the board meetings and all of that. They put my name on the ballot and they voted my ass president. It was a 2-year tenure, first and last time for me. They got me back, but when I stepped down they had to take it back because it was only 4 or 5 people that'll actually volunteer on the board, and they do an excellent job. Just my 2 years, they learned about equality and how to enforce rules with a blind eye. We also made some adjustments to the covenants filed with the state to make them more fair. And yes, Karen and Jennifer were in charge of everything, lol. They got what they deserved, and hopefully it taught them an expensive lesson. Sadly though, all the other homeowners will suffer the financial burden the board caused. They need to band together and sue every board member for not being diligent with association funds. The board has a duty and legal responsibility to manage the association's money in a fiduciary capacity. It would be really funny to see the homeowners sue and win, and then put a lien on every board member's home and eventually foreclose on them. Turnabout is fair play in this instance. I never thought I'd be the kind of person to get all worked up about homeowners association drama, but here I am, fuming over the latest mess in our condo building. It's been 6 years since I moved into this 103-unit complex, and I've always tried to be a good neighbor, you know. I pay my dues on time, I keep my place tidy, and I even go out of my way to help address community issues when I can. But lately it feels like I'm banging my head against a wall. Let me back up a bit. About 6 months ago, this new guy moved in. We'll call him Mike. Seemed like a decent enough dude at first. We'd chat in the elevator, grab a beer at the local pub now and then. I thought, hey, maybe I've made a new friend in the building. Little did I know what was coming. So Mike, being the new guy and all, decides he wants to get involved in the community. Noble enough, right? He runs for a spot on the HOA board and gets elected. I mean, good for him, I guess. Me, I've never wanted to join the board. I figure the ridiculous monthly HOA fees I pay are contribution enough. Plus, who needs that kind of stress in their life? Anyway, Mike joins the board and things start going downhill pretty fast. Now our building has always had some communication issues. It's like pulling teeth to get straight answers about anything. But with Mike on the board, it's like they've taken the art of poor communication to a whole new level. Last week was the final straw. They dropped this bomb on us about an emergency water shutoff scheduled for Friday. Now, I'm no plumbing expert, but I know our AC units need water to function. So being the responsible resident I am, I hop on our community forum and ask if we need to turn off our AC units during the shutoff. Crickets. Absolute silence. It's like I'm shouting into the void. Finally, after calling them out on their terrible communication, yeah, I'm not afraid to ruffle some feathers, they come back with this gem. We do not anticipate having to shut down the entire cold water line or the line feeding the cooling tower. The building and individual unit HVAC should still be operational. However, as a precaution, if your unit is impacted, turning off the unit during the work is recommended. Oh great, clear as mud, right? I couldn't help but fire back, thank you. But how are we supposed to know if our unit is affected, especially when we're not home? Most of us work during the day and don't want to risk losing our AC in the middle of summer. My family won't be home all weekend starting tomorrow morning. Am I supposed to turn off the air completely and return to a sauna on Sunday because no one knows which water lines affect which units? Or do I leave the AC on and just hope for the best? I appreciate the board's efforts, but this guessing game and poor communication isn't acceptable. I mean, seriously, is it too much to ask for clear instructions? We're not mind readers here. So Friday morning rolls around and I've got to head out of town for the weekend. What choice did I have? I turned off my HVAC system before leaving. Better safe than sorry, right? But man, I knew I'd be coming home to a sweatbox on Sunday. Fast forward to Saturday, and my phone starts blowing up with notifications from the community forum. Turns out, a bunch of residents are reporting that their AC units aren't working. Shocker, right? I couldn't resist. I screenshot one of the posts and sent it to Mike with a simple, "Told you this would happen." His response, "Mine is working fine. Are you kidding me?" I couldn't believe it. Here's a guy on the board, someone who's supposed to be looking out for the entire community, and all he cares about is that his own unit is working. Talk about selfish. I tried to explain it to him. "You're not getting it," I said. "This isn't about your unit working or me taking precautions. It's about hundreds of people dealing with poor communication despite paying the same fees." The board could have simply said, "Turn your AC off while we complete this work." But it's like talking to a brick wall. He just doesn't get it. And to make matters worse, now we're hearing that our third-party vendor will likely charge to flush the lines in each unit. Because apparently, we haven't paid enough already, right? When I brought this up to Mike, his response was infuriating. It's a difficult situation because people are having issues. You don't get it. I don't get it. I don't get it. I'm the one who's been living here for 6 years, dealing with this crap day in and day out. I'm the one who's been trying to get straight answers and clear communication. I'm the one who had to come home to a sauna because I took precautions that shouldn't have been necessary in the first place. The more I talk to Mike, the more I realize how blind he is to the bigger problem. He admits that the board's communication was poor, but he won't do anything about it. Every time I try to explain that the board is responsible for this mess, he deflects and blames everyone else. It's like he's drunk the HOA Kool-Aid or something. I'm at a loss, honestly. I've tried being nice. I've tried being firm. I've tried explaining things in simple terms. Nothing seems to get through. And the worst part, this is just one incident in a long line of communication failures and mismanagement. Remember when they decided to repaint the hallways without warning anyone? I came home one day to find my entire floor reeking of paint fumes. No notice, no nothing. Just, surprise, hope you don't have asthma. Or how about the time they fixed the elevator, only to have it break down twice as often afterward? We were stuck taking the stairs for weeks while they figured out what went wrong. And did we get any updates during that time? Of course not. Why would they bother keeping us informed about something as trivial as whether or not we can access our own homes? And let's not forget the great parking debacle of last year. They decided to reassign parking spots without consulting anyone. People who had been parking in the same spot for years suddenly found themselves relegated to the far corner of the lot. The chaos that ensued was like something out of a bad sitcom. Cars were getting towed left and right because no one knew where they were supposed to park anymore. It's not just the big things either. It's the constant drip, drip, drip of minor annoyances that really wears you down. The way they ignore emails for weeks, then act like you're the unreasonable one for following up. The passive-aggressive notices they post in the lobby about proper trash disposal, instead of just talking to the one person who keeps leaving their garbage in the hallway. And don't even get me started on the annual budget meetings. It's like they go out of their way to schedule them at the most inconvenient times possible. Who can attend a meeting at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday? And when you do manage to make it, they rush through everything so fast you can barely keep up. Heaven forbid we actually have a meaningful discussion about where our money is going. The thing is, I know I'm not alone in feeling this way. I've talked to plenty of other residents who are just as frustrated as I am. But everyone's afraid to speak up too loudly. There's this unspoken fear that if you rock the boat too much, you'll suddenly find yourself on the wrong side of the board. And who knows what kind of petty revenge they might take. I've thought about moving, believe me. But the housing market is insane right now, and the thought of going through the whole buying process again makes me break out in a cold sweat. Plus, who's to say the next place won't be just as bad? At least here I know what I'm dealing with. So here I am, stuck in this ridiculous situation, paying through the nose for the privilege of living in a place where clear communication is apparently too much to ask for. And the worst part, I can't even vent to my friend Mike anymore. Every time I try to talk to him about these issues, he gets defensive and starts spouting board propaganda. I miss the days when we could just grab a beer and complain about normal things, like the weather or sports teams. Now every conversation feels like a minefield. I'm constantly biting my tongue, trying not to say something that'll set him off. It's exhausting. And you know what really gets me? The potential. This building could be amazing if it was managed properly. We've got a great location, decent amenities, and a diverse community of residents. With the right leadership and some basic communication skills, we could turn this place into something special. But instead, we're stuck in this endless cycle of miscommunication and mismanagement. It's like watching a car crash in slow motion, except the car is our home and we're all trapped inside. I've tried to be part of the solution. I've volunteered for committees, attended every meeting I could, and offered suggestions for improvement. But it feels like screaming into the void. Nothing ever changes, and the same problems keep cropping up over and over again. Sometimes I wonder if I'm the crazy one. Am I expecting too much? Is it normal for an HOA to be this dysfunctional? But then I talk to friends who live in other buildings, and I realize that no, this isn't normal. This isn't how things are supposed to be. So what's the solution? I honestly don't know anymore. I've tried being proactive. I've tried being patient. I've tried working within the system. Nothing seems to make a difference. Maybe it's time to get more residents involved. Maybe if enough of us speak up, they'll have to listen. Or maybe it's time to look into legal options. There have to be laws about this kind of mismanagement, right? Whatever the answer is, one thing's for sure, something has to change. We can't keep going on like this. The stress, the frustration, the constant feeling of being ignored and disrespected, it's not sustainable. As I sit here in my still too warm apartment surrounded by the echoes of slamming doors and muffled arguments from neighbors dealing with their own AC issues, I can't help but feel a mix of anger and sadness. This isn't what community living is supposed to be like. We're all in this together, or at least we should be, but for now all I can do is shake my head and mutter under my breath the phrase that's become my mantra lately: screw HOAs. This is partially on your fault. You said that you want run for the board because your dues are enough. If you were to step up and run for a board seat, you would have the ability to improve communication, but you're too lazy to take that step. I have and will always advise in-person confrontation once other methods have failed. For 4 years I gave my HOA the courtesy of calling or emailing them and waiting for their response. After multiple incidents like yours, I had enough. If I needed to talk to a board member, I go to their front door. No communication or announcement. If the community manager didn't respond to me, I'd wait by his car after the monthly meeting. Now they respond to me immediately to avoid having to deal with me in person. I don't much care what they think of me. Our relationship is a legal one defined by the CC&Rs, not a personal one. People have become far too used to the comfort of communicating via devices. Property managers are often corporate employees used to the mandatory etiquette of their offices, and board members are often retired employees that enjoyed the same. Take that comfort away and watch them fold.
I would like to thank you for watching the video to the end. To encourage us to make more videos, please like, subscribe, comment, as well as share. Check out this other video if you haven't already.